Why yes, that is a 30k Bulbasaur. Thank you for noticing. What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, and you guessed it, it's time for our weekly Pokemon card auction recap. Folks, as usual, an absolutely staggering amount of auctions to go through. We saw a tremendous amount of black labels come by, which brings me to our subject of today's video. We're going to compare certain cards that have sold as PSA 10s to their black label BGS 10 counterparts and see just how much more a black label costs than it is for a PSA 10 copy. We're also going to take a look at just a couple of the new Japanese Scarlet Violet cards that came out that have been graded. Not too many, just a couple that we're going to compare as well. Before we jump into this epic auction recap, let me just say today's video is sponsored by Z&G Emporium's eBay auction consignment service. Go visit zngemporium.com for details on how to submit your cards for auction. Once again, folks, they do all the scanning, listing, and shipping of your graded Pokemon cards and put up with all the hassles in between. And they do it for almost the same rate you'd be paying to do it yourself anyway. So if you have some cards to sell, do yourself a favor. Go visit zngemporium.com for details on how to submit your cards for consignment. All right, let's get into today's auction recap, starting off with the brand new Japanese Gyarados EX from the Japanese Scarlet Violet set. This sold as a PSA 10 this week for $112.50. We had a couple Crown Zenith cards come by, including these energies here. Yes, graded energy cards. Now, in all fairness, these are holographic energies, but they range from $26 all the way up to about $49 for a graded holo energy. So I'll just leave that right there for you. We saw an Arceus V-Star Secret Rare card sell as a PSA 10 for $430, while a BGS 10 copy sold for an even $500 this week. And here's where we get into the comparisons between PSA 10s and Black Label examples. Here's a PSA 10 Japanese 25th Anniversary Blastoise Holo, sold for $82, but as a Black Label, it sold this week for $635. That's 7.7 times as much, or $553 more for the Black Label copy. Here's another new card. It's a Japanese Arcanine EX, sold as a PSA 10 this week for $95, but the BGS 10 Black Label sold for $1,345. And folks, that is 14 times as much, or $1,250 more for the Black Label copy. Here is a Japanese Mewtwo V-Star from V-Star Universe, and PSA 10 sold for $122, but as a Black Label sold for $1,175, and that is 9.6 times as much, or $1,053 more for the Black Label example. Here is a Espeon VMAX alternate art from Fusion Strike, and PSA 10 sold for $305, but a Black Label example came by as well, and it sold for $2,225, and that is 7.3 times as much, or $1,920 more for the Black Label of this card. Here is a Charizard VMAX from Shining Fates, sold for $215, while a Black Label sold for $2,125, and that is 10 times as much for the Black Label of this card than it is for the PSA 10 copy. Here's a Charizard VMAX from Champion's Path, sold for $330 as a PSA 10, and as a Black Label, it sold for $2,236, which is 6.7 times as much, or $1,906 more. And then lastly, we have the Charizard GX from Hidden Fates, the SV49, sold as a PSA 10 for $760, while a Black Label example costs about $3,800. And that is 5 times as much, or $3,040 more for the Black Label slab. So tell me, folks, Black Label cards, are they worth it? Are you a big fan? Let me know in the comments. A couple other interesting modern cards came by. Here's a Mewtwo GX from Shining Legends, sold for $355. Such an awesome concept of a card there. Here's a special delivery Bidoof that sold as a PSA 10 for $760, while this PSA 10 Charizard Staff card from Team Up sold for $1,850 this week. And then we saw an absolute slew of vintage cards come by, as always. Here is a 1997 Gyarados Prism card that sold for $1,542 via Z&G Emporium. We saw this Charizard CD promo holo come by. There's an absolute staggering amount in the PSA 10 pop report of this card. It sold for $694, while a BGS 10 copy sold for $2,701. And then here, this is actually mislabeled by Probstein, but these are CGC 10 perfect base set shadowless cards. You have Poliwag, Ponyta, and Ghastly. The Poliwag and Ponyta sold for around $106, while the Ghastly sold for $152. And you just don't see CGC 10 perfect vintage cards come by very often, so I wanted to touch on that. Here are a bunch of PSA 10 shadowless cards from base set that came by. Here's a Nidoking that sold for $1,212. The Zapdos sold for $1,465. Hitmonchan here sold for $1,775, while this Gyarados sold for $1,825. Ninetales sold for $2,025, and the Mewtwo sold for the most at $3,383. And then I wanted to mention this CGC 10 French first edition base set Mewtwo that sold for an even $1,000 this week. Up next, we have some more base set cards, and this is particularly hilarious to me. I call these Probsteinisms. Check it out. We have a first edition Yellow Cheeks Pikachu from base set in PSA 10 that sold for $1,320. Now, what's particularly funny about this is in the title and the subtitle of this card, it identifies it as a ghost stamp Pikachu. When the correct answer, I believe, is a gray stamp Pikachu. Gray stamp was the answer. I'm going to put up on the screen here what an actual ghost stamp Pikachu looks like, and this is not that. Whoops! Up next, we have a first edition PSA 10 Raichu that sold for $7,300. Then here's a PSA 6 first edition base set Charizard autographed by Irida and sold for $9,300, while the PSA 10 Unlimited Charizard here sold for $9,100 this week. We saw a first edition pre-release Aerodactyl holo from Fossil, sold for $825. Then we saw a bunch of vintage CGC 9.5 cards come by. Here's a first edition Vaporeon from Jungle. The CGC subgrades are very strong for this card. They all got 9.5s, and the edges got a 10. And this card sold for $1,711. Here's a 9.5 first edition Gengar holo from Fossil, sold for $555, while this first edition Blaine's Charizard sold for $1,545. Here's a CGC 9.5 first edition Slowking holo from Neo Genesis, sold for an even $500, while this CGC 10 Pristine Umbreon from Neo Discovery, Unlimited, sold for $1,825. A few more Neo cards came by. Here's a first edition Kingdra from Neo Genesis, sold as a Gem Mint 10 for $1,125. And then check this out, folks. This is pretty interesting. We've got a CGC 9.5 first edition Heracross from Neo Genesis that sold for $338. And then we saw a PSA 10 copy of this card. Very, very low pop. I think there's only 20 PSA 10 examples of this card. Very valuable, selling for $5,578 this week. A couple of Shining cards. Here's a first edition Shining Magikarp, sold for $3,250, while this first edition Tyranitar sold for $3,700. A couple of E-Series cards. Here's a beautiful Houndoom from Aquapolis, sold for $2,551. And then we saw this Espeon from Aquapolis sell for $1,194 this week. A couple of auctions from SM Pratt. Here's a PSA 8 Gold Star Charizard, sold for $2,080. A PSA 10 Japanese Shining Magikarp sold for $7,100. And then a PSA 10 Charizard EX from Fire Red Leaf Green sold for $2,900. And then we saw a 2013 Black and White Promo Champions Festival card in PSA 9, featuring good old Bidoof on there, sold for $5,601 this week. Here's a Scyther EX from Ruby and Sapphire, sold for $679. Here's a Kyogre EX from Crystal Guardians, sold for $610, while this Suicune EX from Magma vs. Aqua sold for $4,400 this week. From EX Team Rocket Returns, we saw a reverse holo Dark Slowking that sold for $710. And it's interesting because the holo version of this card sells for like half that price. It's just crazy to me how in some sets like this and Legendary Collection, the reverse holos go for a significant amount more than the regular holos. We saw this Rayquaza from Call of Legends that sold for $1,045 as a PSA 10. Up next is the PWCC Weekly Auction Recap. We saw a 2015 Art Academy Chespin card in PSA 8.5 condition, sold for $2,880. Here's a 1997 Pikachu Prism card, a very old design of Pikachu right there, sold as a Gem Mint 10 for $2,760. Another Shining Magikarp came by in PSA 10 that sold for $3,240. Here's an unlimited Shining Charizard from Neo Destiny that sold for $4,200. And a Gold Star Trico came by again and sold for $4,560. Here's a first edition Shining Gyarados in PSA 10 that sold for an even $6,000. We also saw a first edition holographic Zapdos from base set that sold for $7,200. And then we saw a 2016 XY Promo Champions Festival card in PSA 10 that sold for $8,400 this week. Here is a PSA 9 Gold Star Rayquaza that sold for an even $9,000. And then the last auction of the day is yet again another Gold Star Espeon. I believe we saw one come through last week as a PSA 10. This week it sold for $11,700. And folks, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of these auctions. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. And yeah, that's all I got. You have a good one. I'll catch you next time.